It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we continue to talk property news every day, 7 days a week, as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. It is a Thursday today, June the 27th. And good morning to you, Swan, on the Gold Coast, working in the building industry, you tell us, and religiously listening every morning. You are a 22-year-old and still living with your parents who are helping you to save for a deposit. You said that your parents are paying 30% on every dollar that you put into your savings account, and that you should be, by the end of the year, have enough saved up to buy a property. Well done. Congratulations on that. And that is a great incentive, isn't it, really, for you to save? Your parents probably want to see you move out so that they can reclaim their house and their lives back. So it is a bit of a win-win. Clearly, they love you, Swan. They just want to help move you on at 22 years of age. And what about you? Have you got something similar to the story about Swan relating to saving for your deposit? Are your parents helping you out? Let us know if there is something similar. 30% is definitely a strong motivator in anybody's language. You can email us, myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Well, joining us this morning is Nick Buick, the founder and CEO of On-Site Manager. And Nick, these are the days and the times that we live in, eh? The parents helping Swan out there with his deposit.
That's right. Yeah, the bank of mum and dad is alive and kicking these days. It's getting harder and harder to buy your first place. I know the government's bringing in a lot of policies at the moment to help first home buyers, and yeah, it's definitely a trend that we'd love to see more of.
You know, one of the big downsides for parents is that they have children living at home, in some cases indefinitely. They can't get rid of them because they can't afford to get into a property and the rents are too high.
Yeah, that's right. It's not easy out there at the moment. You know, prices are only going north. We're seeing a lot of first home buyers actually purchasing traditionally rent properties. So properties that normally people would buy as a rental property. A lot of first home buyers now are acquiring those properties to live in as owner occupiers. It's definitely something that's happening at the moment. It is hard to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So it's time to educate ourselves right now about management rights. Some will say, what is that exactly? Others will say it sounds complicated, but it is an area that more and more Aussie investors are turning to. So every month we are going to break it down piece by piece. What is it all about? What are the moving parts? And by the end of each discussion, I hope that it will become a little less complicated and become more transparent, because I guess our role in all of this is we talk to the experts, they break it all down into easy to understand pieces of knowledge and information. So, Nick, let's start with what might sound like a basic question, but probably most of our listeners won't know what the answer is, and that is, who pays for the on-site manager?
Yeah, exactly. I know when I bought my first property, it's a while back now, but I moved into a Strata complex and I had no idea about management rights or who was paying the on-site manager. He was just a man who lived in the building and seemed to have an office there, and that was about as much as I knew. And I was paying him. And the reality is every on-site manager, that they get their income in two ways. Firstly, they get it in commission from their rentals that they manage, whether it be a holiday complex or a permanent complex. Most on-site managers will manage lots within that scheme. So they get commission from that, which is a variable salary. It's based on performance and how well they can manage those lots. And then the second half of their income comes from their caretaking salary. And that's a fixed income that's agreed with between the manager and the body corporate. The length of that agreement varies by state. In Queensland, it can be up to 25 years for that agreement. So it's a fairly solid, predictable income that is based on what they have to do in their contract. In that capacity, the body corporate pays the manager, and then the lot owners that agree to allow the manager to manage their lots also pay the manager.
Now, of course, I can hear people say, so what is the manager's income? What is the typical range? Can you tell us that?
We have a lot of management rights on the onsite-manager.com.au that are for sale, and we did a little bit of analysis on it and actually worked out what the average per lot income was. And it varies between almost just under $2,000 per lot per year to the higher end of $2,500 per lot per year. That's sort of the standard deviation there for their income. Income typically is based on how much work they have to do. So if you're in a holiday complex that has resort facilities and swimming pools and saunas and gardens, then that income generally will be higher. That's where you see the sort of higher end incomes of around $2,500 per lot. If it's a very low maintenance permanent complex, typically that income will be lower per lot per year.
And what does the on-site manager do in return for the income? Because they've got a bit of work to do, right?
They do, yeah. A lot of people just think, the on-site manager is just getting paid to sit there and twiddle their thumbs and make a fortune. And that's no joke. I've read legitimate news articles with that sort of criticism. It's just not the case. The manager's income, and we're talking now about the caretaking income, that's set out in their caretaking agreement. So everything in that agreement is what they have to do. So whether it's vacuuming halls every day or maintaining car parks, looking after the swimming pool, trimming gardens, mowing lawns, all of that stuff is outlined in their contract, and they have to do all of those things in order to earn that money.
All right, so we are talking with Nick this morning, finding out what an on-site manager actually does. After the break, we're going to find out what if you want the on-site manager to do a little bit more work. So we'll find out that next.
From buying strategies, a fluctuating market, the importance of data, geographical differences, confidence in the market, rental yields. Stay informed every morning from 6 a.m.
And right now it is time for another property tip. And we are going to Canberra this morning to catch up with Ileana Rohan-Thierry from Better Real Estate. And what have you got for us this morning?
Good morning. I guess one thing I wanted to mention is big blocks in Canberra lend themselves to the opportunity to put a second dwelling on, and that's something which certainly adds value when you're out there hunting, something to always consider and know that you're not really paying too much because you've got that opportunity for extra value down the track.
And just in terms of those sorts of second dwellings in your area, what are the sort of sizes that people are putting up?
I mean, anything from a granny flat to a studio, it just depends on the lifestyle choice that they're looking at adding on.
And are you seeing a lot of it?
Yes and no. It depends on people's circumstances. A lot of multi-generational families, it is quite popular that they're having mum and dad live with them. So it is picking up a bit of steam.
From interest rates rising, a shifting landscape, rentals running hot, clearance rates, a tight rental market, we cover it all every morning from 6 a.m. on the Real Estate Breakfast.
And it is a Real Estate Thursday. We are catching up this morning with Nick Buick, the founder, CEO of On-Site Manager, and finding out all about the ins and the outs of the business. Just before the break, we were finding out about the on-site manager's income, also what the on-site manager does in return for that income. But Nick, what if I want the on-site manager to do more work? Can you explain how that works?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said earlier, there is a up to 25-year agreement, and that depends on the type of complex and also what state that complex is in. It does vary significantly from state to state, but in Queensland, it can be up to 25 years. And that agreement outlines everything that the manager has to do. And one of the criticisms that body corporate members, that is the lot owners that employ the manager, one of their criticisms often is, this guy's not doing these things. And if those things aren't in the agreement, then they're not things that they have to do. So sometimes body corporate committees or body corporate members want the manager to do things outside of their agreement. If that's the case, then the agreement has to be renegotiated. So generally, the manager will want to top up their agreement at annual meetings. They'll go to the body corporate and say, I'd like to add another 5 years onto my agreement. Typically, they get approved in about 85% of cases. Resort brokers did an analysis on this. In 85% of cases, those agreements of topping up are agreed to. Most body corporate members, in the majority of cases, are happy to do that. But that is when you have some bargaining chips at your disposal to say, well, yes, we're happy to top up, but we would like to also amend the agreement and outline some extra work that we'd like done. And then the salary can be renegotiated as well. Typically, those salaries will be set by CPI. So as inflation increases, then so does the salary, so that the manager doesn't end up getting shortchanged. And yeah, those are the points at top up when the body corporate can decide to add extra work into that agreement if they require it.
Yeah, so it's a real negotiation process. Now, you did say that 85% are successful in making those changes. What happens if it actually reaches a little bit of a stalemate and hang on, hold your horses, nobody's agreeing to anything?
Yeah, that happens. It's not as common, but ultimately the body corporate and the committee, they hold all the cards and they get to decide what they agree to and what they don't. So it is a negotiation. Sometimes those top-ups don't get agreed to. Ultimately, you're going to want to top up that agreement. If a management rights contract runs out, then it obviously devalues the agreement completely. That's when the manager needs to put on their negotiating hat and make sure that happens. So sometimes it doesn't get agreed to, and if that's the case, then you can always go back to the committee next year and lobby again and go from there.
Okay, and on-site managers being overpaid, I know that is a question I think that you are constantly asked, so perhaps you could break that down.
Yeah, it is. It is a contentious issue. People, like I said, and I've read articles in major newspapers, particularly in the last couple of years, making ridiculous claims that managers are being heavily overpaid and they're not doing anything. Like I said, they've got a contract there and they have to honour it, or they're in default of their contract and they can get fired. It often comes down to body corporates and committee members who are just ordinary people like you and me. They're not particularly experts in this industry. They've been elected onto the committee and often they don't understand strata themselves. When a body corporate's remuneration salary for the manager is being decided, often what's done, it's called a time and motion study. And these are conducted by independent consultants who specialize in this industry. And they'll put together a time and motion study. They look at everything in the agreement that the manager has to do. And then they work out based on a fairly basic salary. It's basically the award wage. It's not much more than that. It's only around sort of $40, $50 an hour. They work out everything they have to do, how long it's going to take them, and how many hours it's going to take per year. And then they come up with a number. In the vast majority of cases, that number that they come up with is significantly more than the manager actually agrees to as their salary. So what we find, particularly in Queensland with those long-term agreements, is that managers are actually trading their potential income in exchange for job security. So that they're happy to do more work for less money as long as they have a long-term agreement in place that protects them. It's a two-way street. I think it works well. But basically, the manager's income is generally decided on by an independent consultant. And like I said, normally it's less than what they actually advise that their income could potentially be.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you for once again helping us to sort of untangle this web of the on-site manager. And thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast. Enjoy your Thursday.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Craig. I appreciate it.
From first-time home buyers to seasoned investors to breaking property news, discover the stories behind the real estate. We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.